numerous decisions, as well as interpret what our eyes are trying to tell us. We observe our surroundings, interact with others, and react based on situations that we are presented with. But the truth is, the way that we see the world isn't always the same as others. What we see, hear, and believe may not always be real. And the reason behind it all, we'll find out pretty soon. I'm sure everyone has a list of things they carry with them, everywhere they go. For some people, it might be their phone, their watch, their keys. For other people, it could be a pen, a laptop, or even a wallet. But let's talk about something each and every one of you carries with you everywhere you go. Your brain. Yes, your brain. It is the most powerful tool you have. But here's the catch. It is constantly tricking you. From making snap judgments about others to deciding what's for dinner, your mind is fast, but not always right. And the culprit behind it all? Perception. Perception is like that friend who says they're 5 minutes away, but really they're still at home. It's convincing, but it's wrong. It's simply a lens through which we view reality and interpret the world around us. But this lens can easily become clouded, distorted, or even broken. The gap between perception and reality shows us what our brains are truly capable of, and how our experiences shape our daily lives. Because perception shapes everything. Your choices, your relationships, and your reality. I want you all to think back for a moment. Have you ever stood along the edge of a pond, spotting something shimmering beneath the surface of the water? Perhaps a sparkling rock, or even a shiny coin. If you ever bent down to pick it up, you would have found nothing but ripples, only to discover that the water bent the light, distorting what you saw. This exact moment reveals how much our minds waver in the gap. But the best part is, we don't necessarily have to fix our brains, we just have to understand them. Because by understanding how our perceptions shape our reality, we can make better choices, build better relationships, and see things, not just as they appear, but as they truly are. So, let's step onto this bridge together, because understanding the difference between perception and reality isn't just about seeing the truth, it's about living it. Let's begin with a simple question. Who here has ever judged someone within the first few minutes of meeting them? Maybe even seconds. This is called the halo effect, a cognitive bias where our impression about somebody in one area influences our impression of them overall. If somebody's dressed sharply and speaks confidently, we might assume that they're trustworthy, incredibly intelligent, or maybe even rich. But is that always necessarily true? Think about job interviews. Studies show that 4 out of 5 hiring decisions are made within the first 7 minutes of an interview. Often, hiring managers can make the wrong decision simply because they were swayed by confidence or appearance rather than competence or fit for the role. Think about how much potential is overlooked simply because of a first impression. And it's not just job interviews. Our minds associate certain traits with completely unrelated qualities, leading to judgments that are both unfair and inaccurate. We might assume that taller people make better leaders, that a friendly smile equals good character, and that somebody's accent reflects their intelligence. These assumptions fail to dig underneath the surface and understand the complexity of who a person truly is. These assumptions are known as stereotypes. Stereotypes are mental shortcuts, generalizations we make about people based on qualities such as race, gender, even background. They exist because our brains like patterns. Instead of evaluating each person individually, we use cultural messaging and our past experiences to make judgments. The problem? These judgments are often wrong. So, what do we do about it? The answer might not be as simple as ignoring our initial assumptions, as these instincts, these biases, are deeply ingrained within us. However, we can start questioning them. The next time you meet somebody, ask yourself, is this who they truly are, or just my impression of them? Give people a chance at a second impression. Start up a conversation. Ask a question. Or simply listen. It takes effort to challenge the labels that we've been taught to accept. But once we do, we open ourselves up to seeing people as they truly are, rather than who we expect them to be. By now, we understand that our minds are trained to take shortcuts, leading to us seeing the world based off our past experiences as well as patterns. But just as we jump to conclusions about people, we often reach for the most familiar ideas when making a decision. I want you all to think of a fruit that begins with the letter A. Did you think of an apple? Most people do. That's called priming, a psychological event where what you see or hear influences your response. Even if you didn't choose the fruit apple, you likely thought of an apple first and then changed your answer simply because you knew what I was going to say. But either way, an apple was the first thing that your mind reached for, simply because it is the most common and familiar choice. But what happens when making a decision even more complicated than choosing a fruit? Perhaps deciding where you want to go for university, or what major destination you want to visit next. What drives your choice? Our minds run on two powerful engines. System 1, your lightning fast, intuitive autopilot. And System 2, your creative, analytical problem solver. System 1 helps us avoid danger and make quick decisions. Think fight or flight. But System 2, that's where creativities and breakthroughs live. It's where you get great ideas when you give it time to work. But here's the catch. We often stick to System 1 simply because it is the most easy and efficient. It uses heuristics to make decisions as easy and quick as possible. Heuristics are like cognitive rules of thumb. Think simple strategies used when processing information in order to make decisions. But these heuristics can lead to systematic judgments and error. For example, the availability heuristic determines the likelihood of an event based on how easily we can recall similar instances. This is why people tend to overestimate the danger of a plane crash after hearing about one or two on the news, even though statistically, flying is safer than driving. Another common heuristic is the anchoring heuristic. Imagine you're shopping for a jacket, and you see one priced at $300. But then, you find a new jacket priced at $150. This second jacket suddenly seems like a great deal, not because of its actual value, but because our mind is anchored onto the original $300. In reality, the second jacket might still be overpriced, but our anchor shifts our perception. And although our mind might trick us, heuristics might help us in everyday lives, but they also show us why relying on instincts alone isn't always enough. That's where System 2 comes into play. It's what allows us to step back, question our initial judgments, and make decisions that aren't just fast, but truly informed. Now, decision-making is one way that our minds trick us. But our minds don't just shape what we think, they shape what we see. Let's put that to the test. I'm going to show you all an image with two labeled squares. And I want you to decide which one of the squares is darker. Pretty simple, right? Take a moment to compare the two. Have your answer? Raise your hand if you think that square A is darker. Raise your hand if you think square B is darker. Now raise your hand if you didn't raise your hand. Well, if you said that square B was darker, you'd be wrong. But if you said that square A was darker, you'd also be wrong. Because here's the secret. They're both actually the same exact color. Don't believe me? Here's a picture of them side by side. Pretty cool, right? But we might not interpret them as such because our minds aren't just interpreting visual information. They're trying to make sense of the world around us using context. When light and shadows are involved, our brain uses our daily experiences to fill in the gaps. In real life, when an object is embedded in a shadow, it appears darker than its true color. Therefore, when we look at the illusion, our mind focuses on what the color of the square should look like, rather than what its actual color is embedded in the shadow. But that's not the only way that our mind distorts what we see. No, sometimes what we expect to see shapes what we see, leading us to focus on details that confirm our beliefs while ignoring everything else. Imagine you're meeting someone new for the very first time. Perhaps a classmate, a coworker, or even a friend of a friend. And before you meet them, you're told a little bit about them. Perhaps your friend tells you that they're extremely nice, or maybe you hear that they're a bit distant. Now when you meet them, your mind is shifted to see exactly what you were told. If they smile a lot and they're incredibly friendly, your mind will focus on that detail, telling yourself, I knew it, they are nice. But what if they're a bit reserved and they don't smile as much? Your mind will then focus on that detail, telling yourself that, I knew it, my friend was right, they are a bit distant. A few times, maybe even more than a few times. But confirmation bias, it doesn't just stop at people. No, it shapes the way that we interpret news, media, and even our personal experiences. It's like wearing glasses that are specifically tinted to see only what you want to see. It makes us more likely to engage with news, articles, and videos that align with our perspectives, while ignoring anything that doesn't fit. The real danger about confirmation bias is that it keeps us stuck. It stops us from seeing the full picture. It makes initial assumptions last longer than they should, and doesn't allow us to change our perspectives when new viewpoints come to light. But here's the good news. Once we recognize it, we can begin to challenge it. By actively seeking out new perspectives, asking ourselves if we might be wrong, and giving people a fair chance, we can get out of the trap. Just because your brain wants you to stick to the story that you've told yourself doesn't mean that it is the full story. So, where does that leave us? We've explored how our brains take shortcuts, how our biases shape our thinking, and how our decisions are shaped in ways that we might not always realize. But the real question is, what do we do with this knowledge? Because understanding that our brains trick us isn't always enough. If we don't change the way we think, we'll continue to fall into the same traps. Judging people too quickly, believing only what we want to believe, and making decisions based on instinct rather than insight. You can begin by slowing down. The next time you form an impression about somebody, ask yourself, is this who they truly are, or just who I expect them to be? The next time you form a decision, question yourself, is this the right choice, or just the most familiar one? And the next time that the answer seems obvious, question yourself, is this the entire picture, or just the part that my brain wants me to see? Because often, the most obvious answer might not be the right one, it's just the easiest. The truth is, real understanding, real thinking outside of the box happens when we start questioning the way that we see the world. It happens when we step back and stop taking everything at face value. Think back to that moment at the pond, the way the light shimmered beneath the surface of the water. Your brain told you exactly where that coin was going to be. But once you reached your hand out, it wasn't where you expected. But what happens when you know the trick? The next time, you adjust. You reach beyond it. You extend your hand past where your brain tells you to, and you find what's actually there. That's what awareness does. It doesn't just erase the illusion, but it gives us power to see beyond it. And although perception might shape reality, it's up to us to decide how much of that reality we're willing to accept and how much of it we're willing to challenge. Thank you.